Greetings everyone, I'm making dinner right now and I'm having chicken tenders and I'm set up for a three dish breading system because I feel like breading them tonight. I actually have place to myself, and if you remember our famous cat who actually wakes up now that I'm talking to her, even though I was yelling at her earlier. Anyway, three dish breading system is set up so that you don't cross contaminate that much. You have one dish for your egg wash, one dish for flour, and one dish for the breaded product. What you do is you would take I'm not going to demonstrate this on camera because I have to hold the camera. What you do is you take one of your items to be breaded, egg wash, just enough to coat it and wipe it off in the end. Put it in the breading, take your clean hand, or your other hand, that's when you coat it a bit of the breading, shake off the excess, then set it aside to be cooked. It's done that way so that you have one hand touching only the raw meat and the wet stuff, so only one hand handling the really bad cross-contamination stuff, and the other hand handling only the dry stuff. That way you don't spread germs as much. It's just one way to keep healthy in the kitchen. And if you notice, I have a pile of potatoes there. It's because we got a sharpening stone, and I was sharpening one of our knives today, and oh my god, it cuts a whole lot better. That before I sharpened it, you'd have to force to go through a potato, and you're not supposed to cut like that when you're let's move this aside for a sec. When you're slicing, it's best to just let the knife go through with as much gravity as possible. I can't really demonstrate it one-handedly because it's because you need the other hand to hold the item, but this is a lot cleaner cut. This is getting a lot cleaner cut than what we had before, because before you'd have to force down, and you don't force down if you're cutting. That is very bad for the cut and for the knives. You want to just slide forward, and if I had my free hand, I'd be able to demonstrate that a little bit better. I'm definitely not the best with knife skills, so so yeah, you're gonna. So I always end up with nice parallelograms and that sort of stuff for when I'm doing cutting. So yeah, we've got a clean knife, and that's how you do a three-dish breading. You use it. This is a method. The breading is normally a method used for like pan frying, deep frying, and otherwise coating something light like chicken tenders or fish, so that it would be so that it can survive a harsher cooking method than normal. Normally, that's, well, I can't really think of a good example off the top of my head because I haven't really worked with this stuff that much. My group's mostly got like baking and roasting and stuff. And we're on the one with the pat oven, so what the hell. But yeah, it's a good way to add flavor and cohesive, or not, yeah, bit of cohesiveness, keep it all together, and while cooking with a stronger, higher heat method. This is why you like poach fish or bake fish at a low temperature, because it's very delicate and you don't want it to fall apart. But if you add a bit of a coating, it can handle a bit of a higher temperature. Okay, that's probably what I was starting with. And one thing, and because I mentioned seasoning, I forgot to mention what I seasoned this with, my flour with. It has a bit of paprika, a bit of cumin, a bit of salt, and a bit of pepper. You can probably see the pepper in it right away. I just like experimenting with different seasoning combinations and finding stuff that works good together. So sometimes you'll be pretty surprised. Sometimes they'll be like, I don't taste this, or it doesn't work out. And baking or cooking is as much of an art as it is a science, and on the science side you experiment, as well as a whole lot of the physics and chemistry behind it. But yeah, okay, so quick side story. My teacher our chef, he would say, make a big point of cooking is an art, not a science, and then go into a lecture on the science behind cooking. It was I enjoyed some of those moments. He also was, I probably also mentioned this, but he is French and he had some really good rants about the English. He's a fun guy. He's a really fun guy. He also teaches the wine pairing class, which, like I mentioned last time, is something or last cooking video, or no. Whenever I talked about the planned meal for later this week, I brought a bit of wine pairing, and that's something I learned from that class, and it's really fascinating because you have to think of a lot of variables. Anyway, sorry for rambling while staring at flour, eggs, chicken, and potatoes, and pies. Pie. Okay, everything's breaded up. I add a bit extra. Might just cook it up, at least the eggs up a bit. One bit of advice is you don't salt eggs before you cook them, because salt is is an anticoagulant, so it keeps eggs from grouping up together. So, you don't put it in an omelet until after it's done cooking. Is basically what I'm going for. I don't know what I'm going to do with the rest of the breading. If I had something else I could use, I'd probably use it up. But other than that, it's probably ending up on the lawn for the plants or something. Might go through another dusting. Anyway, also want to point out pan I use for sauteing and stuff, and I made a mess right there. I can't find my towel. But no, wait, that's not any color that I was using. Anyway, pan that I like using for sauteing and pan frying is this is our only one I would use for this stuff, because actually I think we have a wok, so that'd also be acceptable. It's uniform material all the way through it, so there's no chance of getting Teflon broken off into the food, which is a risk. Even though it is Teflon, you don't want to have that end up in your meal. And it's good, and since it's all one material, it's good for getting the heat spread more evenly, even on electric. So it ends up working out fine for this. This being our only pan we have, it just so happens to be enough to handle a plate of that. If you're doing, like, say, half as many of these, you definitely want a smaller pan, because otherwise you're putting all of your items in this one concentrated area. So all of this area has heat escaping and juices flowing either side, so you're losing a good deal of your flavor and stuff that you could then use for sauces and the like. And we have light tasting olive oil. I have absolutely no idea what that means, because light tasting is not a designation of olive oil that you ever learn about. Types of olive oil you do learn about are, say, virgin and extra virgin, and that refers to how soon after they're picked that the olives are pressed to make oil. And to borrow a joke from Dirty Jobs, what makes an olive extra virgin? It's very ugly. Hi-oh. Something like that. Mike Rowe's a lot funnier man than I am, and you probably know that by now. And one quick aside, despite this having a sunflower on it, we just keep this bottle for canola oil, and it would be a better preferred oil for any sort of frying, because it's very mild flavor and has a good heat resistance, very high smoke point. Unlike olive oil, which doesn't have as high of a smoke point and imparts its own brand of flavor on it. Also, it's not really good that we store these oils right by the heat source, because heating destroys the bonds that keep the oil together, so they lower its usability over time, which is why if you ever run a deep fryer in a restaurant, that you change the oil after every so many uses, because otherwise the oil has a lower temperature that you can heat it to, and you can't cook as well at the lower temperatures. Unless you're doing like poaching or something, or simmering or something that's a low temperature. But frying is usually at the same temperature you shove a roast into the oven at. So that's about 100 Fahrenheit difference if you're going to get technical. And while I'm heating up the oil, just thought I'd do a quick little point out. Sauteing is low oil, and if you can tell, there's just a little bit of movement around the pan, so I use a slight bit extra than I really need. Sauteing, you just want to coat the bottom of the pan with a little tiny bit of oil, and then get it to a high temperature. Since I can't really control flame on this, I just have to set it to the highest and hope for the best. And sauteing is very fast cooking, so you're usually cooking only for like 3, 4, 5 minutes if you're doing it right. If we're doing pan fried, you would want to fill up the pan about 1/3 to 2/3 up the length of what you'll be cooking or deep frying. And that's good for something like a really thick pork chop. Otherwise, because I normally get like really thin pork chops, so about that thick, and that's better for sauteing because they're thin. If you're getting like the thick pork chops about this thick, you're putting them in the oven, or you're pan frying them. Definitely not sauteing them, because they'll have way too much pink inside of them, and that's very, very unhealthy. And I know that I don't really watch the show, but I know Gordon Ramsay gets really pissed off if you serve him undercooked meat. And there's a very good reason, because you could poison, if not kill someone, if you don't cook your meat properly. So getting a pork chop to the right temperature all the way through is a very important thing. pork, like chicken, are some of the only meats that should be served well done. Otherwise, you're going to kill your customers. Stuff like beef and lamb you can go under because the bacteria and viruses in them die at a lower temperature, and they have a lot more flavor when they're medium rare or so. So yeah. Now, you probably remember me saying Teflon is a no-no when it comes to cooking, but that's mainly just for like sauteing and other good pan dishes like that. But it's actually really good material when you're doing egg dishes, so like an omelet or scrambled eggs, something like that sort of stuff. And this is this size of a pan, about the size of my hand across, compared to this one being a lot bigger than my hand, is perfect for eggs and omelets and not much else, because the sides like that keep the heat in really well, and good little Teflon pan. Chef had apparently got a set of pans like this for when he teaches egg cooking, but other classes found them and cooked steaks in them, because if you got a steak about this big, it fits in that pan really well, and that completely ruins them, because as you see, using them for stuff other than eggs isn't really the best thing. But I'm going to melt this butter because it's very good for coating a pan for eggs and omelets, as opposed to using an oil. And this is real butter, not margarine, so you avoid that little risk. And honestly, I like heating it and then taking away, and usually if I'm working on the heat, I just keep anything on there until it's at the temperature I want, then add everything off the heat to avoid any mishaps, which is exactly what I did with my chicken tenders. Now, while I didn't show either of them being cooked, chicken turned out pretty good looking, if I do say so, and looks like it'll be a good one. And eggs, God, I just hit stop like 5 seconds ago, pretty much. Good way to cook is stirring it up with a spatula. That's the way I do it. It's not like the right professional way to do it, but it's as close as I can get to an omelet style, and it makes your eggs really airy and fluffy and very tasty. And it's at this point is when you add like your seasoning, salt, pepper, cheese, and the like. So a little bit of pepper, a little bit of salt, because you don't just a tiny bit to taste, and then those are done. Probably not going to show it because I have no idea what I'm going to do for it, but I'm thinking of whipping up a quick sauce for these, and definitely getting some sort of fruit or something. We have some really good pears that the neighbor gave us, so yeah. So I've been enjoying those, and honestly, that's what I tested the knife on first. I was like, okay, let's see how it slices a pear compared to how it did recently, and it's like right through it. So yeah, figure out the rest. Okay, this impromptu dinner videos, final results: breaded sauteed chicken tenders, a giant peach, which would go very good with my middle name, a small plate of eggs, some potatoes and an impromptu cream sauce, and best I can whip up at short notice, and I have the potatoes on hand, and some ramen. So that's very good looking. Look forward to getting to it, and leave you with one important question: which do you eat first, the chicken or the eggs?